Have you ever had that feeling? You know the one, where you're just holding it all together. In the professional world today, there's this huge unspoken pressure to be fine, to be on, to be okay, even when everything around us feels kind of shaky and overwhelming. It's a feeling that's become way too common, and if you're in any kind of leadership role, it's a whole different level of challenge.
And this quote just, man, it hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's such a simple sentence, but it perfectly captures the incredible pressure we're all swimming in. We're expected to be at the top of our game while trying to deal with a world that's, well, constantly in flux. And if you're a manager, you're not just handling your own stuff, you're trying to support a whole team of people who are right there in it with you.
Okay, so let's dive into this. To figure out how to lead when nobody's really okay, we first have to get way better at spotting the signs of struggle. And not just in our teams, but, and this is so important, in ourselves. We're not talking about big dramatic meltdowns here. Usually it's a lot more subtle than.
Now, what's so wild about these signs is how normal they feel, right? We're so good at just pushing through. But these are serious alarm bells. Like when you start dropping things you know are good for you, like exercise, you're basically in survival mode. Or when that dread about Monday starts creeping into your Saturday, your weekend's not a refuge anymore. And this last one, revenge bedtime procrastination, it's fascinating. It's that feeling where you just refuse to go to sleep because the whole day felt like it belonged to someone else, and you're trying to steal back a few hours for yourself. These aren't just little quirks, you know? They're big red flags telling you you're overloaded.
So, why is this happening to so many of us? Well, for decades, the workplace has had this unwritten rule: emotions don't belong here. We were all taught that being professional meant being sort of robotic. But that whole idea is just fundamentally wrong, and it's actually hurting our ability to do our best work. Let's break this down, because this is a really key distinction. For so long, the business world was obsessed with efficiency, doing things right. It's all about streamlining processes, minimizing waste. It's the how. But true effectiveness, that's about doing the right things. That's about the what, and more importantly, the why. And you simply can't get to the right what or a meaningful why if you ignore the human element, the actual people doing the work. And that, of course, brings us to productivity. We love to measure it, don't we? Lines of code, story points, all those metrics. And look, they're useful, but they only tell you a tiny part of the story. A team can look super productive on paper for a little while, but if they're just running on fumes, it's completely unsustainable. If you ignore the emotional health of your people, I promise you, eventually those very metrics you're tracking are going to fall off a cliff. This quote from Susan Cain just sums it up perfectly. That old school idea that we're supposed to check our feelings at the door when we clock in, it's not just outdated, it's actually damaging. When you suppress what you're feeling, it hurts your own health, and it absolutely crushes your team's ability to be creative, to collaborate, and ultimately to be effective. So if ignoring our feelings is the wrong move, what's the right one? What does that look like? Well, the great news is we don't have to guess. There's some incredible data out there that basically gives us a playbook for what great modern management actually is.
Let's talk about Google's Project Oxygen. Now, this wasn't about opinions or gut feelings. Google did a massive, data-driven deep dive to figure out the specific, observable things their best managers were doing. They really wanted to know, what do the leaders of the most successful, most satisfied, most innovative teams actually do all day? And what they found is basically a blueprint for all of us. And here's what they found. It's fascinating. Notice that these aren't personality traits, like is charismatic. No, these are all actions. They're behaviors. A good coach gives thoughtful, specific feedback. A manager who empowers their team gives them the autonomy to do their job without someone breathing down their neck. And right there, at the core of an inclusive environment, is this idea of psychological safety. That just means creating a space where people feel safe enough to take risks, to share their wild ideas, and to voice their concerns without being afraid they'll be punished for it. That's a game changer. A great manager also understands that teams go on a journey, right? Bruce Tuckman's model here shows it perfectly. Every single team goes through these stages, and this is where those Project Oxygen behaviors are so critical. Take the storming phase. That's when conflict naturally pops up. A bad manager will try to shut it down, but a great manager, they use their coaching and communication skills to guide the team through it, helping them build the trust they need to get to that magical performing stage. All right, so let's do a quick recap of this big mindset shift. First, we got to admit that burnout is real and learn to see the warning signs. Second, we have to move past this obsession with just efficiency and realize that real effectiveness comes from embracing our humanity. And finally, we need to actually do the things that great leaders do: coach, empower, and most of all, create that psychological safety. Now, this isn't just about managing other people. All of us need some real practical tools to get through today's work environment. So let's get into your personal toolkit for fighting burnout and communicating a whole lot better. In a culture that just glorifies the hustle, pausing is almost a revolutionary act. Taking a break isn't a weakness, it's a strategic move. Look, you might not be able to take a week off, but you can take the break you can get. Block out a no-meeting afternoon for yourself. Create a little ritual that signals the end of the workday to your brain, something that helps you switch from work self to private self. And my personal favorite, be rigorously unproductive. Do something just for the fun of it, with absolutely no goal attached.
Okay, here's a situation I think we can all agree is uncomfortable. You have to give someone critical feedback. How in the world do you do that in a way that's actually helpful and not just destructive, especially when everyone's already a little on edge? This is the COINS framework, and it is an absolute game changer for taking the fear out of these tough conversations. Let's walk through it. C is for context. You start by connecting the feedback to a goal they have. O is for observation. You state a specific, factual behavior, not a judgment. I is for impact. You explain how that behavior affects the team or the work. N is for next. You work together on a path forward. And finally, S is for stay. You just check in and make sure you're on the same page. This simple structure can turn what feels like a confrontation into a really productive problem-solving conversation. So let's bring all of this home. We've talked about the problem, we've looked at the data, we've got some personal tools. What's the big core message for the future of work and leadership? Here it is, the most important point. This is not about choosing between being a results-driven boss or a nice boss. That's a false choice. The best leaders know that their main job is to create an environment where people can do amazing work and feel a sense of pride and dignity while they're doing it. They balance performance and humanity because they know that humanity is what actually fuels great performance in the long run.
This quote? Wow, this is what it actually looks like in the real world. Just think about the weight that was lifted off this person's shoulders. Their manager didn't wait to be asked for help. They saw a human being going through something tough and just acted. They made it safe for that person to just be a person. That is leading with humanity. And that kind of proactive support, it builds a level of trust and loyalty that you could never, ever buy with a performance bonus.
And that really brings us to our final thought. This whole thing isn't about some massive, overnight transformation of your leadership style. It's about small, consistent actions. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. What is one small thing you can do, starting this week, to create a little more psychological safety? Maybe it's just asking a coworker how they're really doing and then actually listening to the answer. Maybe it's admitting in a meeting that you don't have all the answers. Or maybe it's just blocking off 30 minutes in your own calendar to be rigorously unproductive. The journey to a more humane and effective way of working starts with just one